this time we're going to be talking a little bit less about, well, still about ourselves. Always about ourselves. Yeah. Until we have guests. But more so about our pregnancies and how they went.
Yeah.
I think we had similar pregnancies, kind of.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Somewhat similar.
Okay.
I feel like symptom-wise, pretty similar.
Yeah.
But a lot of different, like, little hiccups that made ours that much different until the end.
The end was very different. I had a very different end of pregnancy than you did, which we'll get to.
We will.
But I think we should start with maybe, like, were you trying to get pregnant?
Yeah, we're going to start from the beginning.
We're going to start from the very beginning.
We're going to take you guys back to the beginning.
Yeah. Well, okay, so were you and Brandon trying to get pregnant when you found out, or how did that all happen?
Yeah, so, well, let's start it with birth control. Fun topic of conversation. So actually, which was funny enough, I was one of those people that the COVID vaccine messed up my periods.
Okay.
So even on birth control, I was getting my periods when I wasn't supposed to, and it was like a disaster. And my doctor was kind of like, okay, well, there's some options, like you can start another one because this one clearly isn't working for you. And I was like, I feel like this was around June or July, and I was like,
of 2020?
Yeah,
2021.
2021. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The years are kind of a blur.
Oh, I know.
And I was like, well, let me talk to my partner, but I feel like if we're going to start trying for a baby soon, maybe, like, I won't try a new one because it takes 3 months to start working. So anyways, we decided I wasn't going to go back on birth control, but we were being safe otherwise. So then we had kind of decided we were going to start trying around October, like our 1 year anniversary.
Of getting married.
Of getting married, yeah, sorry. But then in September, we were just like, letting it happen, I guess.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
PG.
We were just letting things happen.
Yeah.
So I feel like we weren't trying, but I mean, as you know how a baby comes, we also weren't not trying to. Yeah. But then we had this big anniversary trip planned, and we were going to go to Quebec and spend like a whole weekend. So we flew to Quebec on Thanksgiving weekend, which is our anniversary. And I remember like my period was supposed to come, and I'm never late. But because this was like my body getting used to not being on birth control, I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
And I remember being so tired, like exhausted. And
on the trip?
On the trip. And I would nap every day. And Brandon was like, why are you so tired? And I'm like, travel, like we were outside all day. Like I was kind of thinking, oh, I could be pregnant, but at the same time, like,
you were kind of rationalizing it, like making it make sense.
Yes,
yeah.
Because
you were fitting
away.
in the fatigue.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, maybe I didn't get my period because flying. And like, what, Quebec is like a 45-minute flight? Like,
whoa, that trip really threw me off.
Exhausted, guys. I was exhausted.
Okay.
So we got home, and I remember being on the trip, and I was like, we went on a wine tour, and it was like, I don't know, it was kind of like, should I be doing this? But I was like, there's no way, because I always told
What do you
people,
mean, should I be doing this?
Like, should I be drinking? Should I be eating like oysters? All the things that I'm like, I don't think you're supposed to do that while pregnant. Obviously drinking.
Yeah.
But I was like, there's no way, because I always told myself I was probably infertile, or I just wasn't sure because my body and my periods were just so awful.
Yeah.
And I was always like psyching myself out, I guess.
It's kind of like a defense mechanism, right? Like you were probably hearing about all the stories, like it takes a long time for people to get pregnant, and then for yourself, I
wasn't like cycle tracking or anything, so I was like, there's no chance. And we get home from our trip, and all the stores were closed because we were delayed. So Thanksgiving Monday, I went to Shoppers Drug Mart, and I picked up some tests, and Brandon and I peed on them, and then we looked together, and it was like as positive could be. Like, it was so bright. And I remember like we didn't have that very excited, like, oh my god, shock, because we were just so shocked at the moment, right? Like, I wish I recorded it, because I feel like we would have looked back and been like, what an awful reaction to seeing a pregnancy test. Like, you're like, holy shit. Like, I think we were both just staring at each other, like, I think we hugged, but it was like so awkward. Like, it was so weird, and like, it was unbelievable, honestly. And I remember every night after that, I took more pregnancy tests, like every single night, and Brandon was like, what are you doing? Like, they're positive. And I'm like, it just seems too good to be true.
Yeah.
And that was our trying. That was how we found out. So
that was how Jack came to be.
Yeah.
Okay, mine isn't exactly the same, but it's interestingly very similar.
And we don't know each other's these parts, so this is all news to both of us too. So this is so interesting.
Ever since we decided to do the podcast, I've kind of held back asking you things that I'm interested to know.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, that's going to be on the podcast, and I feel like it'd be interesting to hear it for the first time.
Completely agree.
In that setting. Okay, so here we go. This is Winnie's
coming of
age story. Yeah. So during COVID, I kind of started this passion project, which was getting certified as a registered holistic nutritionist. And in my studies, I started to learn more about birth control and how that can impact your body and like what kind of things it can do to you that, it's not desirable, right?
And let's just say, I feel like from when we were kids, it's like you have period pains, birth control's pushed. You have heavy periods, birth control's pushed.
You have acne,
birth control.
Without educating you on what it's actually doing to your body.
Yep, and so many people are the same as us.
I could now that I've looked into it, and I've done a lot of research, extensive research on like women's health, hormones, periods. Oh my goodness. I could do like a sub podcast on just that. Like, it is insane. And I kind of had that reaction when I started to find out about this. I was like, holy crap, like, back up. I did not know about this. This is all new information to me. And I just kind of spoke with Brad, and I just said, I'm not comfortable continuing to take birth control. Yeah. Like, at this point in my life. And I did other research on how you can prevent pregnancy naturally, and I was all set. So I had actually went on Amazon, and one of my friends recommended like an LH, like an ovulation testing kit. Yep. And it came with pregnancy tests. So that's what I was like, that was my setup. Yeah. And every month I would test like to see my ovulation, and I was tracking, and I got really into it. Like I really enjoyed the process of tracking and seeing like the predictability and whatever of my cycle. So it made me feel more in tune with myself. And yeah, that worked for a really long time. Yeah. Until it didn't. So Brad and I had kind of talked about it. We had just gotten married, and I had kind of mentioned to my friends, like, oh, I would love to be pregnant. Like, this is my, like, I would love to be pregnant come September kind of thing. Yeah. But Brad was not really loving the job he was in at the moment, and he decided he was going to make a move and a switch, and we had no idea financially what kind of situation we would be in, or if he would be getting these jobs that he was applying to. And so he kind of brought me back to reality and was like, listen, we just got married, let's enjoy this time. Yeah. Let's start trying for a baby when I have a solid job that I know I'm gonna get. And I was like, that makes sense. Yeah. Did I cry thinking about not having a baby immediately? Yeah, every night. But
it was realistic.
It was realistic. And I kind of needed that, like, bring me back to reality, because the hormones of just wanting to get pregnant and like have a baby was just taking over. Oh yeah. So I kind of put it out of my head. Like I was like, oh, okay, it'll happen eventually, but not right now. And like I didn't really let myself think about it too much, because it was kind of sad to think like I'm not going to be able to get pregnant right now. So that happened. And I was actually on a trip also. Brad and I took a little trip with my cousins. Okay. And it was like a weekend getaway. This was in November, like end of November. And we decided to do like a Christmas trip. Like a bunch of my cousins, my brother, we all rented this huge, gorgeous cottage. It was stunning. Oh my God, nice. And we just like had a Christmas vacation. Yeah, it was amazing. So we spent the weekend together watching Christmas movies, just making gingerbread. It was so fun.
Oh my God, it's a Hallmark movie.
It was a Hallmark movie. But in preparation for this, we like ran to the LCBO, and Brad was getting some stuff to bring with us. And I have to preface this with the fact that I haven't drank alcohol in over 8 years. So I was just along for the ride. We were getting it and going. And we walked down the wine aisle, and I was like, I was just drawn to it. Like I feel my hand reaching for the wine bottle. I was like, this honestly sounds so good. I want this. Yeah. And I was like, I'm gonna do it.
What kind of wine was it?
It was a Woodbridge Sauvignon Blanc.
Oh, Delish. Okay.
Delish.
I just had to know.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
And so put it in the cart, brought it with us on the weekend, and I was supposed to get my period. But since I had gone off birth control, my periods were really regular, but it wasn't uncommon to go like 2 days.
Okay.
You know, like,
yeah,
okay, I didn't get my period for 2 days, whatever. It wasn't a cause for concern. So that's kind of what happened. Like, I was anticipating getting it on the weekend, and it never came. And for some reason, I didn't drink the bottle of wine. Like, it just didn't come up. Like, we weren't drinking a lot. We were kind of just in our Christmas feels.
Yeah.
And it just didn't happen. I was like, okay, whatever. So I brought the wine bottle back with me, and I was like, I'm going to drink it, but I should probably take a test, like, just to be sure.
Yeah.
So I ran upstairs, like, right when we got home from the trip, too. Because I was like, well, we've just been driving for 2 hours. Like, I have to pee now, so might as well.
May as well.
So I peed, I grabbed my little ovulation kit that had those little cheap pregnancy tests, and I dipped it in, and it was immediate. Yeah. Like, it was like, wait 3 minutes, and I was like, okay. Immediately came up.
Yeah.
And I was shaking.
And did Brad know you were taking the test?
No, I don't think so, because I literally didn't think anything of it.
Okay.
Like,
you just had to pee, and you were like,
I just had to pee, and I was like, well, might as well just take it.
Yeah.
I had no symptoms. Other than the fact that, like, my period was a day or two late.
Okay.
But that's not even, to me, a big deal.
But also maybe a symptom now that you know is that the craving of the alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what a strange thing to crave.
Yeah.
Like,
and you can't even fulfill that craving.
No. The second that I found out I was pregnant, that was the last of my concerns, is, like, drinking that bottle of wine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I saw that it was positive.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I was like, whoa. So then I went and read the instructions, because I was like, wait, what does 2 lines mean? I just blanked.
Yeah.
And then it said pregnant, and Brad was still loading like, you have to understand, like, I was sitting on the toilet, like, in my jacket. Like, I had not even done anything.
Yeah.
Brad was still unloading the car. And so I could hear him downstairs, and I was just like, Brad? As he's walking upstairs, I couldn't even wait to tell him. I was like, I think I'm pregnant. And he was like, okay. I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
He comes over and gives me a hug, but it was like that same thing. Like, I was in shock. It felt so awkward. I was like, I'm pregnant?
Yeah. It was awkward.
But Brad was immediately relieved, because he said that when I had called his name, he thought something was really wrong. Like, he said that the way that I called him and was like, Brad, like, he thought one of the cats was like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. Not on everything. But he, like, thought he was going to come up to something really terrible.
And it was really this happy, beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So he was like, why are you freaking out? And I was instantly like sobbing.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of the same thing. I was like, I was so grateful to be pregnant. Mm-hmm. I didn't know if it was going to take us a long time to get pregnant.
Yeah.
So the fact that I was, and then on top of that, I was a little bit nervous to tell him, because I was like, I'm pregnant and you still don't know about this job. Yeah. And where does that leave us? Like, can I be excited about this, or do I have to be stressed?
Right.
And so that was how we found out Little Winnie
was
on the way.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So kind of similar. That's so funny. We had trips and all that. And
yeah. Shocking, but also exciting.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And we both had found out kind of when our periods were missed, because I remember, so talking about first trimester now.
Yeah.
I remember like calling the doctor the next day. It was like a Tuesday, and I called at work, and I like went into a room that like no one uses.
Yeah.
And I made the phone call, and the doctor was like, okay, like just make a ultrasound appointment at 8 weeks. And I'm like, wait, like you don't want me to come in? Like there's no process to like you confirming I'm pregnant? And they were like, well, did you take a pregnancy test? Is it positive? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, okay, so you're pregnant. And I'm like, but are you sure you don't want to use like your kind of, don't you have like
machinery?
Yeah. Don't you have any medical like
equipment?
Yeah. And they were like, nope, exactly what you're doing is what we would be doing too. And I remember being like, okay, like this is just so weird. They're like, we'll send you a rec for an ultrasound and off you go. And then
see you after your ultrasound kind of thing.
It was, I think she saw me a day before my ultrasound because I had to pick up the rec form. Yeah. And then an appointment after the ultrasound. But what was so weird was that I remember going to the ultrasound I was like, oh, 8 weeks. Okay, I'm probably 1 week, so like it's gonna be so far from now. And like you have no idea that by the time you get your period, you're on like week 4.
Yeah.
Who knows that? Yeah. I had no idea that it starts from the week of your last period.
I know.
Like,
that's what
really
your due date.
Yes.
Really confusing. Yes. Because how could I be pregnant when I was on my period?
I don't get it.
Right?
Yeah.
And sorry if people don't want to hear about periods, like sorry, but like it's part of...
It's relevant.
It's relevant.
Yeah.
And it's a part of birth. And if you're a mom, like you've heard about it, you've dealt with it,
yeah.
you know about it.
Grow up.
In the nicest way possible. Grow up.
I mean it nicely. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I that was so confusing because after we did the little cheap Amazon kit test, whatever, Brad was like, "Do you need me to drive you? Like, we need to get more tests." I was like, "Yeah." Mm-hmm. So we drove and got a couple more like expensive tests.
Yeah.
And yeah, when I did it, it was like pregnant 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh, you got the little digital one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, how is that possible? Like, I'm doing like reverse math in my head. I'm like, wait a minute, this is, you know that meme where it's like the guy and like all the math equations are zooming? Spinning? Yeah. That was me. I was like, wait, let me make this make sense. But yeah, so that was how we figured it out. But I kind of had an interesting first couple weeks of pregnancy that I don't think I've ever told you.
Okay.
But so I didn't have an ultrasound booked until the 8-week mark. Mm-hmm. I had the same situation where I called my doctor. It was the same thing where she's like, okay, yeah, those home tests are really reliable now. Yeah. So if it's saying you're pregnant, you're pregnant. Okay, check. Call your midwife immediately if you want a midwife. That was what my doctor said.
Oh my gosh. My doctor didn't tell me that actually. And I'll talk more about my first trimester after. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't know that. But if you... Like, if you want a midwife, like, you should be calling yesterday. Like, even just put your name on a list in case you think you want one. And we'll talk about midwives, but if you maybe want that as an option, call. I completely agree. Right now. The sooner you can get on a wait list, the better. Yeah. So my doctor was actually, she knew me. She knew I was into, like, holistic health. I called her about going off birth control when I made that decision, and we talked about it. Like, I had a very good relationship with my doctor. She just retired. Okay. Nothing's wrong. So when I called her, she was like, listen, I know what you're like, and if you do want a midwife to kind of be a part of this journey with you, you need to call right now, and here's the number that you need to call. Yeah. So, okay. But leading up to my ultrasound, I was having really significant pain in my left, like, hip area, or, like, groin hip area. Okay. And obviously, as anybody who's just found out they're pregnant knows, you're Googling anything. Oh, yeah. And so I Googled that, and it was like, oh, it could be an ectopic pregnancy. Oh, my gosh. Which oftentimes are not viable. Mm-hmm. And I was, like, so upset. I was like, oh, my God. Devastated. Yeah. So it was really late one night, and I was complaining about this pain, and Brad looked at me, and he said, do you need to go to do we need to go to the hospital? And I just needed answers at that point. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, take me to the hospital. Yeah. So we went to the hospital. It was, again, 2021, so Brad wasn't actually allowed to come in with me. He had to wait in the car. Yeah. And he waited in the car in the parking lot until 3 a.m. Oh my I did not get seen until that time. Yeah. What? Yeah. It was like 9 o'clock that we went. Wow. And Brad waited in the car until 3 when I finally came out. And you live so close to the hospital. Like he could have went home. He could have went home. And just been like, text me when you're done. Yeah. But the support is real. The support is real. He probably knew if he needed to come in, like if you texted him come in because something was wrong, like he wanted to be there. He didn't want the 2-minute drive. He was ready to go. He was ready. Yeah. And it was November. Angel. End of November. So... Like, car on, car off. Car on? Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, Brad was in the car, and I was going through this process, and my phone was on 2%. Oh my So I couldn't even do anything. Yeah. Like, it was like I was a pioneer, okay? I was sitting there just observing. I was like, oh, this person's been here a while. I knew everything in that waiting room. So they actually they didn't do an ultrasound that night, but the guy that came in and saw me had like one of those Dopplers. Yep. And he was saying to me, he's like, look, like this is really kind of archaic. It was basically a Doppler hooked up to an iPad. He's like, this is not, I don't want to freak you out and say, like, if I can't find a heartbeat, like you're still so early, that this machine might not be able to detect it, but we're just going to see kind of thing. And I was like, okay.
And so that was actually the first day I heard Winnie's heartbeat.
Aww.
I know. It was so emotional being there by
Oh my
myself
gosh.
and the guy saying, I can see a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't hear it that night.
Okay.
I saw it. The next day he scheduled me for an ultrasound just to confirm.
Why couldn't they do an ultrasound at that time?
Because I had to go to the ultrasound clinic in the hospital.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay. I have a similar experience. So
Okay.
I'm thinking of mine and I was like, okay, but yeah, continue.
So I got seen, but then I had to get like a requisition, I guess, and then the next
Okay.
appointment that they could give me was for 8 o'clock the next morning.
That's good.
Yeah, it was really fast.
And it was already 3 a.m.
It was already 3 a.m.
Yeah.
I literally went home, but I was on such a high from like knowing that that at least there was a heartbeat. That I fell asleep just content and then woke up ready to go.
Yeah.
But sorry, it was the next day when I went for the ultrasound that the lady just said, I can hear a heartbeat. She turned it on for like a second and I could hear it. And yeah, so that was so reassuring, but it was so scary. Like anybody that's gone through that, you'll know. And if you are going through that, I'm so sorry. Like it's hard. You're hopeless. You can't do anything.
No.
Like it's like, you know what, you just give it up. Like if this is meant to be, it's going to be. And if it's not, I'll have to deal with that. But it was so scary.
And how many weeks were you at this point, do you think? Like in and around?
6, I think.
Oh, right, because it was before your first ultrasound.
Yeah.
So it was very early.
Yeah, but my first ultrasound wasn't until 10 weeks, actually.
Oh.
So I had to wait a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why don't you continue your first, like the rest of your first trimester?
Yeah, it was really, I'm going to be looking at my phone for, if you're watching the video, you'll see, just because I wrote it down. I didn't really have many symptoms. So for the beginning, slight cramping, but I think that's called implantation pains. So I had read about that and I didn't think anything of it once I got, once I had that information.
Cleared? Yeah.
Tired by 8 p.m. I wrote nothing crazy or new for me. I'm a grandma. I love to go to bed early. So,
Same.
I also wrote could also be season/weather. Because I guess it was coming into January, December. It was kind of like
the blues. The blues. Yeah.
So that wasn't anything crazy. Oh, I actually forgot about this one. Shortness of breath. I remember walking up like my little flight of stairs.
Yes.
And pre-pregnancy, I was very fit. I was very fit. I was like, working out all the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, so when those little flight of stairs got me, I was like, whoa. And that was looking back. So I didn't attribute that to anything.
Okay.
It was when I was looking back and I was like, shortness of breath. And I wrote, could be my first symptom.
Oh my gosh.
I was very congested and no nausea or food aversions.
At all? Or is that just within your first trimester?
I didn't, no, I had no nausea.
Okay.
Yeah, no. I craved like really bad food. Like I had really significant cravings for like carbs.
And I feel like that's so common.
Yeah.
Between like all women is that they crave either like carbs or sweets or sometimes people crave weird things. Was waiting for a weird craving. I remember waiting my whole pregnancy for like, everyone talks about this and I never had
like pickles
one.
and chocolate or
yes,
something.
I was just gonna say pickles and cheese or something like, well, that wouldn't be bad, but just something weird, and I never got it either. I was so disappointed.
Yeah, me too. The strongest craving that I had was actually for honeydew melon, and I'm not a big melon person.
Yeah,
it's what good when it's in season.
The green,
of all the fruits
in the fruit tray, the green little thing that no one eats. That's what you craved. Oh.
You don't even know its name. You're like, I'm not even getting to know that fruit.
No, it's
melon.
No,
I remember going to Metro, like just on I think I was going to my dad's house, and I was like, oh, there's a Metro there. I could just go get a little tub of honeydew.
Oh my god.
And I bought it by itself.
Well, that's so funny.
Yeah. Okay. But no, I had no fatigue, like other than that little tired by 8 p.m., but who knows if that's weather related.
Yeah.
No nausea. I had no symptoms. Like my boobs felt fine. I didn't really have super sore boobs.
Yeah.
What are other ones that like people say?
In the first trimester?
Yeah.
I feel like nausea is a huge one for most people and stuff like that.
No, the biggest thing for me was actually congestion.
Okay.
I had a really runny nose.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
And it's also winter. So and we work at a school with a bunch of sick kids.
That's true.
So it could go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Or
I didn't make that connection, but yeah, maybe. I don't know.
interesting.
Yeah. What about you? What about your first? Did you have any symptoms?
I never had nausea, thank God, because when I hear people's stories about having nausea, they're like, sometimes their whole pregnancy.
My mother-in-law, forever, all 3 of hers.
See? And she had 3 kids, and that's just insane.
I know.
Like, I thank God I never had any nausea.
Yeah.
I would, though, gag randomly, and always in the morning, like, I would come downstairs, I would open up my pantry and just be like, and Brandon would laugh because we were on the same like morning routine, so he would come downstairs at the same time, and I would just randomly, or I'd be doing something and just have a little and then and we would laugh about it, and like that's it. I would never like thrown up or had to go to the bathroom. It was just always random gags. It was so funny.
Just sporadic gags.
Yes, it was so weird. I was so tired. Like, I would come home from work, we would make dinner, and I would be asleep on the couch by like probably 6:30, 7 o'clock. Like, it was so early, and I remember just being exhausted. Like, I couldn't even make, Brandon and I have all these TV shows that we watch together, and like, I remember having recordings on recordings because I was missing them. I could not stay awake.
Not
it
saying
was
something.
Impossible.
Because the drive to finish a show that you're invested in is real.
Oh my gosh. But then I had my first ultrasound, and it confirmed like a whole bunch. That first ultrasound is so special.
So special.
But it was COVID, so I wasn't sure Brandon was going to be able to come to that first ultrasound, which I think is a little bit unfair because your partners
it's their
are
babies too.
Exactly, but whatever. So
he wasn't allowed to come?
He was, thankfully, but he had to like wait in the waiting room, and they called him in like the last second after they did all their measurements and stuff. And I had a really bad first ultrasound experience. The tech was just not nice. I was so excited, and I'm like laying down, and she was just like no words to me and was just like really mean. And then she called Brandon in, and Brandon and I are like talking, and we're so excited. This is a really unfortunate, we talk about it a lot actually, how unfortunate of a situation it was for your first time. Yeah. But I remember you get the little pictures, and we were so excited.
A little baby bean.
And I remember being like, how am I already 8 weeks? Like, I feel like I just found out.
Yeah, but those first, I'm going to say 10 weeks.
Yes. Fly.
Because
you don't even know that you're in it or I guess we didn't because we weren't. I feel like people that are checking pregnancy tests because they are trying, it's probably a different experience for them.
Because you know right away when you're pregnant because you're testing so often.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But for us, and for me, it was like, oh my God, 5 weeks have already gone. And then, so we came home from Quebec, and then I was like, I need to tell someone. Like, I need to tell my mom. Like,
oh yeah, we didn't talk about
telling. Yeah, I need to tell my mom. Yeah. And dad and my in-laws, like, everyone needed to know. So we found out on the Monday, and then I was like, we need to go tell our parents on the Saturday. And our parents live in the same city, so I was like, let's go. So I just got like this little box, and we went to Winners that first I think we went on like the Friday, and we bought like Jack's first little outfits. And we found like a onesie that said guess what, and I was like, oh my God, perfect. And we got like them two, like each a little box, and we put like little socks in it. It was just so fun buying baby things. I feel like I'll always remember that feeling. Yeah. It was so special.
It's the best feeling.
The best. And we set up a little box, and then we were like to our parents and in-laws, we were like, oh, we got you like something from Quebec. Yeah. Like whatever. They say my parents were shocked. They were like, oh my gosh. And my mom said she thinks that she knew.
Okay. You're not going to be shocked if you knew, Valerie.
She like, right? She was like, I had a feeling. And I was like, okay, I don't know, maybe she's just, we're
maternal
so
instinct.
Yes. So I was like, okay, but that was like really nice. And I was like to Brayden, you should have recorded it. And he's like, I'm a part of this too. Yeah. And I'm like, but still. And I was mad I couldn't see their reactions. Yeah, I would love to relive that. And then we went to my in-laws and told them. And same thing, my mother-in-law was like, I knew. And I was like, guys,
could someone have told me? Because I had no clue.
Exactly. And but that was really fun that we told our parents, and then eventually we, one by one, like kind of told our friends. I called my best friend, and I was like driving home from work, and I was like, I wanted to do it in like the most special way. Yeah. But she lives so far from me, and I was like, so how do you feel about being an aunt? And we were just randomly on the phone one day, and she was like, what? And I was like, I'm pregnant. And she was like, are you really telling me this? Like, like this, and I was like, I just have to tell you. And I remember she was so emotional, and like so was I, but I like had to tell her. I had no time to do anything like super cute.
I remember that feeling of just needing to tell, like when you make the decision that you're going to tell people, just ooh, you got to do it now.
You have to.
Well, okay, so this is kind of funny. So when we were on the way back, like the Sunday that we were coming back from the trip, that we found out that I was pregnant, my mom had texted me saying, because she actually just came back from a trip and had a couple little like gifts for us.
Oh, okay.
So she's like, and my mom lives down the street from me.
Yeah.
So she said, text me when you're home or when you're close, and I'm going to come over just to drop this stuff off.
Okay.
And I was like, okay. So I texted her, or had Brad text her when we were close.
Yeah.
So she was already on her way over.
Oh my God.
So I literally found out I was pregnant, sobbing. Me and Brad are trying to figure this out.
Work through these emotions.
Exactly. And then my mom knocks on the door.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm like, oh my God, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? She's going to be able to see that I'm crying.
Yeah.
And what had happened was when we got back, we saw a little Amazon package. So we quickly opened it. I don't even remember what it was at this point. Tossed the contents of the box away. And we quickly put the pregnancy test in the box.
So smart.
Okay. This is the part that I wish I had on record. Is Brad holding this box, like, no facial expression, just shaking. Brad cannot lie.
Okay.
Like, Brad has no ability to lie in him.
God.
You can tell immediately.
Okay.
So my mom comes in, and she's all not thinking anything, and I have all the lights off.
Okay.
Because I don't want her to see my face. My face goes really red when I cry.
Okay.
So I'm like, she's going to know immediately. So I turned off all the lights. I'm like, hey, welcome. Like, trying to act like nothing's wrong.
Yeah.
And we go upstairs, and she gives us this present that she got us from her trip, and it's a bunch of kids' books. Like, she's like, oh, I was in Newfoundland, and this is like, there's a local like children's author, and I thought, you know, just for future, I wanted to get this for you. Okay.
The timing here is insane.
The timing was crazy.
Okay.
So Brad's over there just shaking, holding the box, he's not saying a word.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, oh, we actually, something got delivered that we got for you.
Yeah.
This is perfect. So Brad's like, you need to take this box before I have a heart attack. I'm like, way to give it away. But my mom, clueless, like, oh, thank you.
Oh my God.
Takes the box.
Yeah.
Literally looks in it, takes it out, and just starts sobbing. Like, so happy.
Yeah.
Like, my mom was meant to be a mom. She always says this, like, I was meant to be a mom. But I think that that's a lie. I think she was just, like, meant to be a grandma.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, she was over the moon.
That is so exciting.
And then once we had told my mom, it was like, okay, well, great, let's get Brad's parents on FaceTime. So I remember FaceTiming them.
The same day?
Oh, within an hour of finding out.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
It was, like, immediate.
Okay.
So we FaceTimed them, and I just remember Brad's mom screamed into the phone.
Oh, okay.
So she's, so excited. And I think Brad's dad's first comment was like, oh, Sarah's gonna get fat. And I was like, oh, perfect. So we just kind of all chatted. My mom was still there, and we just had like a nice conversation. And then I had time because I don't live in the same city as my dad.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what, let's do something special for them.
Okay.
Because we didn't get the opportunity with like my mom or Brad's parents. So I'm like, let's make this special. And so to tell them, we waited until Christmas, which was so hard.
Oh my gosh.
So hard.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to spill the beans. But we ended up getting a little Christmas ornament, and it just said like grandparents established 2022.
Oh, cute. Yeah.
And there's a whole kind of story with that, but
I
won't
Christmas
go into
ornaments.
it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's special.
Yeah. So we waited for them to kind of find this Christmas ornament. Aww. They didn't find it, so we ended up having to give it to them.
Oh my God! Like you had it on your tree or something?
Yeah, like we went to their house and we put it in. They have this little kind of decorative bowl where they keep ornaments at Christmas.
Got it.
And this one was significantly larger, so I thought, oh, this will kind of stand out. And we put it in the bowl, and every time they would walk by it, Brad and I would be like,
it's now,
it's coming. And they walked by it all not to the point where we were going to exchange gifts. And I'm like, they haven't found the ornament yet.
Yeah.
So we quickly grabbed it, like when they weren't looking, and put it back in the box, and we ended up giving it to them.
Yeah.
And that was really cute.
That's so special.
Yeah. I'll never forget the look my stepmom opened it. And I'll never forget the look of her looking at it, recognizing what it was saying, and then just like being like, Chris, and just showing my dad.
Aww.
And then they were so excited.
Yeah, the feelings that they're going to be grandparents, because it's the same for both of us. our parents are it's their first time being grandparents.
Yeah.
So that is just so special. Like it was so emotional, and you're already emotional
because of the hormones.
Because of the hormones, you're pregnant, so it's a whole thing. It's really special.
There is something about like the support you feel from family when, especially for me, because it was unplanned.
Yes, yeah.
And there was a lot of uncertainty related to it, just because Brad was unsure about his job and I was like teaching, but still there's just a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, for sure.
It doesn't even have to be job related, just with what comes with being pregnant and in general having a baby. And then just to know that you have your parents' support and your friends.
Yes. Once you tell your friends. Okay, funny story.
Yeah.
So we went to our friend's house for dinner, and I was like to Brandon, I was like, they're gonna tell us that they're pregnant. I can feel it. Like, and I kind of knew that they had been trying, or like at least I felt it that way. And I was like, there's all these little things that made me think that she was pregnant.
Yeah.
And we went over for dinner to their house, and sure enough, they surprised us that they were pregnant. And I remember I'm staring at Brandon, and we're trying to communicate without words. And I remember we're staring at each other, and I'm like, are we telling them? Because we had briefly talked about it in the car. Like, okay, if they tell us they're pregnant, are we also saying it?
Yeah. Do you take away from their moment of being pregnant?
Exactly. So
or does that take away, or does it add to it? I don't know.
I don't know. But I was like, let's just let them have it. Like, this is so exciting if it happens. So they're pregnant, and Brandon and I are looking at each other, and I'm like,
quick,
oh my God.
Make a decision.
So we decided not to, and I'm really happy we did, because that was their moment. But what's so funny, and we still talk about it, was that we were eating steak. So they gave it to us. They told us. They showed us the ultrasound picture. They showed it to us before we were sitting down to eat. So my friend was like, I'm going to go heat up my steak, because it was done like medium rare.
Yeah, and it has to be well done.
And I'm staring at my steak like,
can you heat mine up too? No reason. I'm really craving a well done steak.
So I ate it.
Yeah, you
I ate it raw. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, like I can't. They're gonna know if I don't. And I remember I love Lola, the wine.
Okay.
I bought something sparkling, the exact same color of it.
Okay.
So I remember drinking it. So they were thrown off. They had no idea.
Yeah.
So maybe I could have heated up my steak a little bit, but I just didn't want to give anything away.
Yeah.
So when we finally told them and I showed them the ultrasound, they were like, wait, what? And then it was just a whole funny story. And we still talk about it. But I remember that being like one of the best like tellings of when we finally got to tell them.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, we're both pregnant. And then now we're both pregnant together, which is so special.
Oh.
And that was amazing.
I didn't have that experience of being pregnant with someone. I had
Except for me.
Well, but I didn't know you at the time. Yeah, we'll get into that, because it wasn't until your gender reveal that I was like,
I love that story.
Me too.
Let me tell it.
Okay,
Not
now?
Right now. No.
Okay, I'll let you tell it. But yeah, so I didn't have the experience of being pregnant with someone, so it was just Brad and I really making these decisions about, are you comfortable telling people? Are you not? When do you do it? Like, that's a whole thing.
Oh my gosh,
Is people say, like, don't tell until you're this many weeks.
12 weeks.
12 weeks. Yeah. And then you're like, well, things could still happen. Anyways.
Yeah.
It was a lot to figure out.
To get comfortable.
Yeah, no, get comfortable. And so I remember we waited to tell our friends, but we didn't wait to tell our family. So that's kind of how we rationalized it.
Yeah.
But I did tell one of the teachers at work.
Oh my God. Because
she told me there was COVID in a classroom that I was teaching in. And anyway, it was just nice to get it off my chest.
Yeah. But I also had to tell work because of my job, because I go into like situations where we're with escalated children.
Yeah.
So I remember talking to Brandon being like, this is complete, because my work knew before. I can't remember if it was before my parents, but like I remember being like, I need to tell them, because at the time we were having escalated students coming into our room.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, I can't go to calls. Like, I'm not putting myself in that situation. I just don't feel comfortable with it. So I remember telling, like, and not everyone at work. I think I told, like, the principal and then, like, our team. Yeah. And that was it. But, I also had to tell work because of safety, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so I told someone at work, because there had been COVID in the classroom that I was teaching in, and she brought it up to me, and I was like, oh. And she could tell something was off, and she's like, what's the matter?
Yeah.
And I've been friends with this teacher for quite a long time, so I felt comfortable. It wasn't like some random. But yeah, so I told her, and she was over the moon for me, and it felt like telling a friend. And I was like, oh my God, this is the first person I'm telling.
Yeah.
So she was one of the first people, and then a waitress because I had to ask if there was pasteurized cheese. There was like something I was ordering.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was like, is that pasteurized cheese? And she's like, I'm not sure, but let me check. And she goes, are you pregnant? And I was like, yeah. And Brad and I are looking at each other like,
we're so excited to tell everyone. Yes.
She's like, okay, I'll find out for you. Like, clearly this was not the first time someone had
asked that question. Yeah.
But that's a whole thing we can also get into, maybe not in this podcast, but when you first find out you're pregnant, like, what is the next steps you're doing? I remember telling Brad, and he was like, your Google's about to go off.
Yes.
Like, you Google everything.
I don't even think there was one afternoon. Like, I think I Googled something at least in the morning and night every single day.
100%.
And still, that's still happening, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was like, okay, so we've talked about like symptoms and telling people. Do you want to get into your second trimester?
So right before my second trimester, I had a scare too.
Oh, okay.
So I remember waking up in the morning and I had bleeding, and you Google it.
Oh,
and
of course. We just talked about this.
One part of Google was like, it could be fine. It could still be implantation and it can be all these things. And the next part of Google is like, you're having a miscarriage.
How many weeks were you?
Just before 12 weeks. So I feel like I was like 10 or 11.
Yeah.
And I went to work and I just need a second.
Yeah.
I told the people that I'd worked closely with, they knew I was pregnant.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry.
Yes.
Because you just think of, your baby now, and you think if something had happened where you didn't end up with that baby.
But also the support I felt in that moment, like the support I was getting from those people. And they were like, just go. And so at the time I was actually had midwives, and I remember calling them. And I was like, because they have like they have an emergency line you can call, which is
a non-emergency.
Yes, which is so helpful. And I called the emergency line and I was like, I have bleeding. And she was like, and I was texting Brandon throughout the whole thing, obviously, and work was like, go deal with it, no problem.
Yeah.
So she was like, I can get you a rec for an ultrasound, but it will probably be in like a couple days. But if you want to know, go to the hospital. Same situation as you. And Brandon and I had made the decision I was going to go to the hospital. He stayed at work because he couldn't come in at the time. You weren't allowed. So, but I got seen so quick. That's I remember amazing. At the hospital, I drove, and I had the option to go to your local hospital. Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to mine just because I knew it would be quicker because it's a smaller town. Yeah. Anyway, so I went and I got seen pretty quick.
That's amazing.
And the guy comes over and he was like a great doctor, and he came over and he's like, this looks really, I think he also said archaic, but it was an ultrasound machine, and he wheeled it in, and it was like the oldest like ultrasound machine I've ever seen, and it had like the smallest little camera on it, and he's like, I'm gonna look first and then I will show you what I see. So I'm like, okay. I remember laying there and I'm crying because either way I knew I was gonna cry, and he was like, I can't remember what he said word for word, but it was just like he said what he needed to say. Like what he said was so helpful in the moment. I wish I remembered, but he turned it to me, and at the 8-week ultrasound, it's like you see a sac. Yeah. Like, but I saw a baby. Yeah. I saw Jack, and it was so emotional.
Oh my god, I'm like about to cry right now just like thinking about that.
I saw him, and that's the first time you see like they have legs and they have arms, and I was so sad that Brandon was not there to see that, because we just saw a sack like in the first one, but it was so special. And I remember I was texting my best friend, because our friends, I don't know how many people knew at the time, not a lot before that point, and she was getting ready to come. Like, she was about to tell work she wasn't coming in, and she was getting ready to drive to me if it was bad. Right? So friends. I remember, I had to text her right away being like, it's fine, and tell our parents it was fine. And
I know.
Anyways, it's so scary when you, but I had bleeding throughout my whole pregnancy, which was really scary.
That's something I think is important to note. Just if you're a mom that's going through something similar where you're experiencing bleeding throughout your pregnancy, just know that it can be normal.
It can be normal.
And it can be fine.
Yeah.
But obviously get checked out if you if you have that and you are concerned about it. I think it's really important not to feel like you're burdening a system. Or like, I remember going to the hospital being like, I don't know if this is even worth it.
I know.
It is worth it.
It is
your
worth
mental
it.
health
Yes.
and you thinking about that, because I remember the feeling of finding out that everything was okay, and I'm trying to think of the word, but there's no word for that. Like, elation. It's reassurance. It is. But it's, you're so happy in that moment, and you can kind of move on with your life. Like, you can make the next step. Yeah. Because if you don't go get that checked out, or if you're kind of living with that in the back of your head, like there might be something wrong, or maybe something's happening where this pregnancy isn't viable, it's consuming.
And we were just about to tell everyone, right? Like, we were planning how we were going to tell everyone else, and I'm like, I needed to know. There was no option where I wasn't going to go. And I remember them asking me on the phone, like, is it enough? And if you don't want to hear about blood and stuff, like, I feel like mute this or skip forward 15 seconds. This is going to be brief. But they were like, is it enough blood to fill a pad? And I'm like, well, I'm not waiting to find out. It's enough that I'm concerned. I'm going. Like, and my midwives were very supportive with that, and our family, and, you know, Brandon, we were all on the same page. So that was good. But yeah, if you feel, and even if you feel like something's wrong, just go use your resources. Use your resources and trust your instinct, because I feel the second you find out that you're pregnant, I feel like you have instincts that you didn't have previously. For sure. And you know, you have to make that call, and you have to trust your gut. Like, your gut is telling you to do something, do it. Go do it. But it was really interesting, because talking about this with my mom, because obviously I told my mom everything. So I was texting her with, you know, 1% battery. I was letting her and Brad know quickly what the situation was. And I remember after talking to her about it, she told me that when she was pregnant with me, she had the same thing. She thought it was an ectopic pregnancy. Wow. And she had that same kind of similar pain. So I had brought it up with her before going to the hospital, and she had I don't think she said, like, oh, I had that same thing too. She just kind of said, like, oh, I wouldn't worry too much about it, like, unless it gets really severe. And the pain wasn't severe, it was just persistent. But there's also so much unknown. Like, now if you have that pain, you're probably going to be like, you know what, this is fine. And that's why your mom was probably comfortable saying that, because she's been through it. But when you're going through all these things as a first time mom, oh my God, everything is scary. The unknown, everything is unknown. Like, it is such a wild roller coaster. It is. And as much as you have your partner, and whether that's your husband or just your partner in general, or, you know, support system, whether it be your parents even, you are, or you feel responsible for anything that happens that's wrong. For sure. Like, there's that feeling of guilt associated. Like, I remember going into the hospital room and being like, if they tell me that something's wrong, it's my fault. Something that I did something. Yes. And that is not true. No. You really have no control. You have no control. It's your body doing what it was supposed to do, and whether it's a viable pregnancy or not. You know, I really believe everything happens for a reason. 100%. And, you know, in that moment, if something wasn't going right, or if it wasn't going to end up being a viable pregnancy, then I know I would have had that guilt associated with it. For sure. But looking back and the hindsight of it, I know now that if that happened again, I would just know that it was nothing that I did. Okay, so we've talked a lot about first trimester. Which first trimester is huge. The most things happen during first trimester. So second trimester we kind of touched on briefly with you, because that's when we started talking about like your experience with bleeding and going in and everything. And honestly, not much happened in my second trimester. You're growing, and you have more than more of a bump, which I thought was so special. I remember, like, I'd be like to work, like, oh my God, I think people are gonna see, like, my bump. Because once your stomach starts growing, like, it is incredible to see, and you feel big. Amazing. And I remember some people being like, Kelsey, you're not even big. And, like, you wait. And I'm like, oh my God, but I'm, like, so pregnant right now. And you wait to see how big your stomach can actually get. It's incredible. Amazing. It is incredible. But yeah, my second trimester, nothing. I had some bleeding continuously on and off, but it was nothing ever, like, as concerning as before. So my second trimester, nothing ever came. I got less tired. I remember that being really the nice. Best. Brandon and I were like, yes, I can watch a TV show until like 9 p.m. Woo! What about your second trimester?
My second trimester, it was the same. I kept waiting for symptoms to happen.
Yes.
And it never came, and I was kind of like, ooh, knock on wood, like, nothing happened. I did have a trip to go visit my sister in Halifax.
Okay.
So I remember flying was a little bit scary for me because I was just about 19 weeks.
Okay.
And so obviously Googled the heck out of that, like, can I fly? But it was fine. I do remember laying in my sister's bed we were just talking with her and her roommates, and I felt Winnie kick for the first time.
Oh my God, that's special.
Oh my God. Yes. And I was like, Georgia, put your hand here. And she's like, Sarah, she put her hand there for like 10 minutes.
Oh my God.
She's like, I can't feel anything. Because it was just me that could feel it.
Yeah.
Those weeks of just you being able to feel, so incredible.
So special.
But also I was just waiting for them to get stronger and stronger because I wanted Brad to have that same experience. Yes. I was so excited to have him feel her kick for the first time.
Yeah.
And people say it feels like butterflies. Mine just I was like, is this gas? I was like, it felt like little gas bubbles.
Actually, at my 20-week ultrasound, the one where you find out the gender, I remember the ultrasound tech being like, do you feel that? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, that's kicking. And I was like, what? I was like, I didn't, because it's weird. I thought it was gas and my stomach is a little off as it is, so I remember being like, that's definitely gas, like that's nothing. And she showed me the screen and I see Jack pounding me with his feet, and if you see Jack now, he's always on the move, like his feet and his hands are always going, and I remember watching the screen and feeling it, and that connection,
so
instant,
cool,
instant. And I remember, and Brandon was there, he was waiting outside of the room,
of course,
and then he came in and he got to see, and I was like, put your hand there and feel it.
Could he feel it at that point?
No, he couldn't feel it at that point, but I remember when he was finally able to feel it, and then I always wanted to be like, put your hand here. And Brandon, I feel like, didn't have a connection as much with my pregnancy.
I feel like that's really
I feel
normal.
like some dads or some other partners, they feel super connected. Like, I remember being like, laying there at night being like, you don't want to come see my stomach move? And he was like, well, I saw it yesterday, or
Brad was like that too.
You sent me a photo already of it moving, and I'm like, okay, like, they're not feeling it and stuff. I get that it's very different.
Very different.
But yeah, Brandon wasn't very, I'm going to say connected to my pregnancy, but that kind of seems wrong to say.
Okay. We just can't think of the word right now.
Yeah. But I remember being like, oh my gosh, come feel it. And he'd be like, okay. And
Brad was the same because I was doing it a lot. Like, I'm not going to lie.
Me too. Every time. Every day. I wanted him to come feel my stomach moving. Yeah.
And it's very different for, your partner. Because they're not the one going through it.
Exactly.
But I will say that I think Brad was connected to the pregnancy, and that he always wanted to be as involved as possible. I'm sure Brand was the same.
Yes.
But yeah, I would be feeling something move and calling him up. Let's say I was upstairs going to bed.
Yeah. And
he was downstairs. I'd be like, Brad, come up here. He'd be like, okay. And if it took him 5 minutes, I'd be like, you missed your opportunity.
Yeah.
You can't, don't feel it. It's done.
Yeah.
But then 10 minutes later, I'd be like, here you go.
But the second trimester is when we started being closer friends.
Yes.
So I had my...
Gender reveal.
What a fun story. I had my gender reveal, which I knew it was a boy, so it wasn't that shocking when we did the canon and it was blue, and we had all of our closest friends and family.
How did you know? Just a feeling?
Yeah, I just knew. Brandon knew too. We just had a feeling it was a boy. We just knew. And
I ask because this is relevant to my side of the story.
Yes, yeah. Okay, yeah. So we just had a feeling it was a boy, both Brandon and I, and we had a reveal, and
your mother-in-law.
My mother-in-law made these cupcakes, which were amazing, but she made enough cupcakes for an army, as she usually does. So I remember having all these leftover cupcakes, so I brought them to work the next day, and I had wrote a note being like, please enjoy these. I left them in the staff room. Please enjoy these gender reveal cupcakes. And I was like, by the way, it's a boy. Because I knew people were going to ask.
Yeah.
So I remember so many people coming down telling me oh, these cupcakes were delicious. Congratulations on the boy. And then you came up to me.
I'll never forget this.
Right by the office, by the bench.
I remember.
And I, we had never spoken.
No.
Before. I feel like maybe ever.
You worked on the top floor, and I was very much in the little kid area.
Yes, yeah.
So there wasn't a whole lot of connection for us to have. And then you were on your duty when I was having lunch.
Yes.
It was just an opposite schedule.
Opposite. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I remember you being like, oh my God, those cupcakes are delicious.
Well, I was pregnant and I was like, I'm about to eat 5 of them and have to explain this was going to be my pregnancy reveal, was me eating all the cupcakes and having to rationalize it by telling people I was pregnant.
And then you told me you were pregnant. And I remember like it was like an instant like zzz, connection. Like we were connected. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my God. And you were like a month behind me.
Yeah.
Which was so you were going on like your 12 weeks or whatever it would have been.
Yeah.
The math.
Yeah.
And that was so special. And that was like the start of our bond.
Yes.
Was these cupcakes so thank you to my mother-in-law, Nicole.
She brought us together.
Yeah, she did.
With those cupcakes.
Yeah.
So I remember seeing that it was a boy on your little note. I saw your note.
Yeah.
Helped myself to a couple cupcakes. And I remember being like, I need to find her. Like in the school, I was like, I need to find Kelsey.
Yeah.
And the reason being is that Brad and I had this immediate feeling that it was a girl.
Yes.
So both of us were like, it's a girl. It's a girl. And I wanted to ask you specifically if you always knew that it was a boy, because I wanted to kind of validate my own feelings.
Yeah, for sure.
And I remember asking you that, and you were like, I knew right away it was a boy. And I was like, oh my God.
We knew.
So did Brad and I.
Yeah, it's
and
so weird.
It was so weird. So my second trimester, okay, so getting back to it, I had that trip that was really special. My sister could not feel it. That's okay.
Yeah.
And then the next day after I got back from that trip, I had my 20-week appointment.
Yes.
So went to that. The woman was amazing.
Yeah.
Can't say enough about this woman who did my ultrasound. And she said, like, do you want to know? And Brad couldn't come with me to that appointment because he was working. And so we had said that what we'll do is we'll ask her to write it on a note and then put it in an envelope. And then when he got home from work, we would open it together.
Okay.
So imagine me going to my appointment knowing that she's written this note. It's in my purse.
Oh my gosh.
I don't even think she sealed it.
Oh.
So I didn't even have that, like, if it was sealed and Brad saw it was unsealed, whatever.
Yeah.
No. So I just had to wait like 4 hours.
It's so hard.
Oh, it was so hard. So we waited, and I told Brad, and we opened it, and it's this little sticky note that we still have posted in Winnie's room right now with all of her other ultrasounds, and it says, it's a girl with a little happy face.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember, and maybe other moms, like, drop this in the comments if you had a similar situation.
We'd love to know.
Love to know.
Yeah.
But also if you can relate to how I'm about to feel. Because I remember Brad and I, we knew it was a girl, and we had our girl's name picked out immediately.
Yep.
That was done. But we weren't 100%. So we also picked out a boy's name, just in case.
Yeah.
And I remember reading the sticky note, it's a girl, and being so happy and not shocked. I was like, yes. Yeah. And then I was thinking, there was a brief flicker of kind of sadness where I was like, oh, that boy's name that we had picked out, I don't get to use that. Like, it's not going to be that name.
Yeah.
So there was a brief moment. But
gender disappointment is real. Not that you had gender disappointment.
No, I wouldn't call it that. I know that that's real. Yeah. And if you're feeling that, that's totally validated and so normal. Yeah. I feel like if you have something in your mind and you feel like you have that mother's instinct and you know it's a girl and then it turns out to be a boy and you're like, you have to deal with that. Yeah. And it takes a lot of people, different times. Yeah. Could take a second, like happened for me. Yeah. Or it could take months. Maybe you're still dealing with it. And it's all okay. It's all normal. Yeah. Everything with motherhood is like,
oh my gosh.
Anything you're experiencing.
Yeah. Normal.
It's okay and normal and valid. Yeah. So I remember having that little flicker of like, it's not going to be that name. Yeah. It's not going to be that baby that I had envisioned. Yeah. But then my mind went right back to, I get my Winnie. Yeah. Like that name, like I said in the first episode, it just was always with me ever since I met Brad and knew his grandmother. And I was like, that's a great name. And I always envisioned having a little girl named Winnie. And I remember Brad being so happy. He's like, you get your Winnie. Yeah. Like, and even to this day, we'll be looking at her and he'll be like, that's your little girl. Yeah. Like, that's Winnie. Like, she's here. And I'm like...
It's insane, the feelings. But I also had mine written down from the tech. But Brandon and I weren't finding out until like a week later.
Oh so my God. You let me ramble on about 4 hours. You had to wait a week?
I think it was almost a week. Or it was a weekend. It was during the week we found out. And then I actually dropped it off to my friend's house.
Yeah, I'd have to get it out of the house.
I gave it to her. Yeah. I was like, take this. And she was getting like, she was getting the cannons.
Yeah.
And I was like, you need to take this. And she was so excited. And I was so excited to give it to her. And like, Maddie is our friend that we trust with everything.
Yeah.
She
Is this Maddie who's upstairs watching Jack right now?
Yes. Thanks, Maddie.
Love you, Maddie. I just met you, but I love you for doing this.
Brandon trusted her with the engagement. Like, she's just been our trusting friend. And I gave her this envelope and I'm like, should we peek? And I remember being so excited. And she's like, leave so I can open it. Like, I am so excited to open it. And it was just, I was being like, here's the paper. And then she bought the cannons and everything. And she was the one that taught us, told us how to do it. But oh my God, so fun getting that envelope. Ooh. Oh, but I got to give mine away. Yeah. Like, right away. I literally drove from the ultrasound right to her so I could get it out of my hands because I would have opened it.
Yeah. I just knew how important it was to Brad, so like that was what I kept reminding myself of, and I was like, can't do it. Yeah. But did I want to do it?
For
100%.
Sure.
Yeah. So that was kind of my second trimester. Yeah. You just go for your like anatomy scan. Waiting for those results was, hard. You're just waiting for like good news, hopefully, and whatever that turns out to be, you just got to deal with that.
But thankfully, all was okay with us.
All was okay.
And you do your glucose test, I think, in the second or maybe the third trimester.
Yeah.
People hyped that up to be crazy, and honestly, in my experience, it wasn't. You drink the drink. I don't drink pop or anything like super sugary. So for me, it was just like, oh, this is, a sugary, syrupy drink. And
I drank it in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, and that was it.
Downed it.
Exactly. And
it
then
wasn't that bad.
It was COVID, so she was like to me, you can go sit in your car. So I was like,
no,
perfect.
I didn't have that option.
Oh, I sat in my car.
I brought Harry Potter and read Harry Potter.
Okay. But it was just easy. So honestly, if you're stressed about the glucose test,
don't be.
Yeah,
I also had the option with my midwife where she was like, you don't have to do it. There's nothing concerning me about your like blood work or anything. And she's like, this isn't optional.
Yeah.
And I opted to get it. But I think it's important to know your options in pregnancy, and if you have a healthy pregnancy and you're not high risk, just know that you have that option to do it or not.
Yeah, and honestly, you're getting so much blood work in pregnancy anyways, and they're able to tell if you maybe you should get it or maybe if you're okay. I agree. My midwife told me this was optional, but I got it anyways as well, and
and then what about your third trimester?
I mean, you're big. And it was starting to get really warm, and I remember I was on the second floor of the school, and our schools don't have AC, and a lot of people actually don't know that. And I find that shocking. AC. Yeah, schools, elementary schools, don't have AC, and I was so hot.
There were a couple really hot days that school year.
We were dying.
We actually showed up to the school in the same dress because it's the only thing.
It was that was the best summer dress. It was like cooling. I remember
it was away from your body.
And everyone thought we looked similar anyways because we always had our hair up and we have glasses and we were wearing the same dress.
Yeah.
And people were calling us each other's names. People did that anyways.
People
were calling us, and
there's another layer when you're wearing the exact same thing on the exact same day without coordinating.
Yes. Third trimester, you're getting through it. You're planning. I was planning my baby shower, which we were deciding to do. And we actually had a diaper party, which, let me preface this by saying, if you're able to have a diaper party, I truly recommend it.
I don't even know what that is.
So yeah, I think it's like a really like newish thing, but our friends did it, and I'm really glad that I did it too, because the guys get together, and usually the guys are supposed to get together on the day of the baby shower, but it just didn't end up. My baby shower was May 1st, which is the day after tax season. Oh. So Brandon didn't even want me to do my baby shower then because he's so exhausted once that day is finally done, but I did it anyways. So we made it work. I needed my best friend to be, I needed Lauren to be there. Yeah. But there was a chance she could have given birth because that was her due date the following weekend. And I'm like, Lauren needs to be there. Yeah. So I was like, I'm sorry, I have to do it May 1st.
Yeah. I'm calling mom card, which trumps
all. Yeah. It trumps all.
Yeah.
So Brandon didn't want to do a diaper party on that same day, which I totally understand. He did his later. But guys, Jack is about to turn 10 months old. I still have diapers from this diaper party. I've never had to buy diapers.
Are you joking?
No.
Brad and I have spent hundreds. Hundreds.
And I've given diapers to 2 other moms from my pile. Yeah. For either a diaper party or for when their baby was born. Yeah. So, and I still have yet to buy diapers.
Okay, duly noted.
Yeah.
Diaper party for my next baby, 1000%.
Honestly, and the guys come, and Brandon supplied like the alcohol and the food.
Yeah.
And he loves to smoke food on the Traeger, so he just like bought a bunch of meat for all these guys and served them beer, and it was good to go. Yeah. And honestly,
which is fun to do with your friends anyway.
Exactly. And it was a chance for the guys to get together too. Yeah. Lauren had just had her baby, so it was like Sean's first getting out of the house too. Yeah. So honestly, it was, if you're able to do it, I highly recommend doing it. Amazing. Yeah, it was good. So
I've learned something already from this podcast. I mean, not that I haven't already. But
yes, yeah. So if you can take away anything, diaper party. Yeah, and other than that, third trimester.
You had some pain though. You had pain in your third trimester.
Oh my god, how could I forget?
Yeah, because this is how we're very different at the end of our pregnancies.
Yes.
Yeah.
In my third trimester, I developed sciatica. And all of a sudden I would be walking, and that was something I loved to keep up doing, was walking. I would walk the dog every day when I got home from work, or even at work. My job is so demanding to be running around everywhere. And all of a sudden, if you've had sciatica pain before, it comes at you like and you can't move. Like, I would be walking, Brandon and I went on a walk, and he almost left me to go get the car to come pick me up because I had to sit down. Yeah. Like on our walk. And
my mom had sciatica with my brother, and I remember having to call the fire department to come get her because she couldn't walk. She was laying on the floor, and I was like, "Are you okay?" God. Yeah. And my stepdad was like, "I have to call someone. Like, this is not normal." Yeah. And she's like, "It's sciatica," and we were like, "No, you can't move. Like, you're paralyzed." Yes. And I remember people coming in, like, I guess it wasn't fire, it was ambulance. Yeah. And they came in and did like an assessment and said it was sciatica, but it's very like, you can have varying levels of it. Oh my gosh. But if it's severe, it can really be like life altering, I guess.
Yeah. And thankfully mine came, like, some people have it constantly, and I don't know how you would do anything because when I got it, and if it happened, I think it only happened once at work, and I was able to just sit down, but like, I feel like it was after a really long day, and I would come home, and then it would like be super triggering. So yeah, my sciatica pain was really awful.
And how long did that last for? Like, until you gave birth?
Yeah. Oh wow. And then it was gone.
It's a miracle.
It's gone after. I remember standing up after birth, and then all of a sudden, like a couple days later, I was like, oh my god, I hadn't had sciatica. And my midwife told me it will go away as soon as you give birth because it's only pregnancy sciatica.
Because the baby's putting pressure on that nerve.
Yes. Yeah. And all of a sudden it was gone. And I was like, this is great.
Sweet relief.
Oh my god. But I started developing Charlie horses as well in the end of pregnancy, and I would wake up being like, and I remember like Brandon can sleep through
anything,
a tsunami. Okay. And I would wake up screaming, and he would jump out of bed, run around to my side, and he would help me because the pain. Yeah. And you're so big, you can't get out of bed. Like, if you have a Charlie horse, you get up, you do a little walk in, you lay back down. I was so big, and I'd be
a Charlie horse when you're not pregnant is not a big deal.
No, you can deal with it. Drink some water before bed, figure it out. No, I remember being like, and he would run around, and he would help me get out of bed, and I would roll out, and then he would help me walk it off, and then we'd go back to bed like nothing happened. And it was like, that was some of my third trimester pain. But we actually, without knowing, ended up going to the same like chiropractor office. Yeah. The mom office. Yeah. We'll call it.
The mom office. Physiotherapist, yeah. And I went for chiro, and that actually really helped. They like did the chiro stuff thing, and that helped me a lot through my third trimester. But the pain of, just things are swelling and stuff is happening, you can't see your toes, you're putting on shoes.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Socks.
Yeah. Though thankfully it was summer, I don't think I wore shoes.
No. Sandals. Yeah. I remember the kids in like grade 8 being like, why are you getting to break the dress code? Because I had spaghetti straps on that one dress that we loved. Yeah. And I was like, mind your business. I am heavily pregnant and it was 30 degrees. Yeah. Don't try me right now. And also, my patience for you and these questions, this thin. So goodbye.
Yeah, I agree. Remember going off early. I actually started my mat leave I was due on the 15th, and I started my mat leave on whatever the Monday was, the June 1st or 2nd, because I was just in so much pain, and it was so hot in the building. Like, you survived, thankfully, but I was so hot, and my job was just so demanding in that sense that I was like, I need to be off. So I made the decision with my midwife to start my mat leave a little bit early, and I remember thinking that I was gonna have Jack early, so I was like, I need to start now and be prepared. Meanwhile, did I know I was gonna go?
Okay, this is a trigger. This is a trigger for you.
20 days past that, but anyways, because I thought I was gonna go early, but I started getting more bleeding towards the end of my towards the end of my pregnancy. So my midwives actually had to do, and you start going for weekly visits at that point, and my midwives had to check me at every visit to make sure something wasn't wrong. And I remember I was like, how? And they were like, no, you're not dilated, or you're a face, like you're very, like your cervix is very thin. And they were like, that's what all the bleeding is. But they were like, no, like you. And so I remember being like, are you kidding? Like, how is this happening?
Yeah.
So.
And my third trimester was really, like, I almost have nothing to say other than, like, I had no pain. I had no symptoms. Like, knock on wood, knock on whatever. Like, thank you to whoever made that possible for me, because I was able to
People may hate us after this, especially you.
Please don't put hateful comments. I'm sure my next pregnancy I'll get everything.
Yes.
But I was really blessed this pregnancy.
Yeah.
And so I had nothing in the third trimester. I remember going to work and people would look at me and be like, are you still here? And I'm like, yeah, I'm...
Because you went to the end of the school year, right?
Yeah, I was there on the last day.
Wow.
Yeah, I went the whole way. And then, so that was end of June. And then Winnie was born at the end of July. So I still had time to, get ready. And I got a month to get ready and get myself together. But I remember, so Brad and I's anniversary is on July 23rd. And we went out to dinner. Like, we were on a patio. We were chilling. We were talking about, like, oh my God, it could happen any day.
Soon, yeah.
And then 2 days later...
Winnie was there.
Out she comes, yeah.
And I think we're going to save this podcast. This episode is long enough.
Yeah.
But, we'll talk about in the next one, the last week of pregnancy and how, then that kind of came about, and then how the babies came and the symptoms leading up to the birth.
And what we were doing to, induce labor. Because I think every mom has, these little tricks that she's trying. Everyone is trying something, you know?
Raspberry tea.
Oh, don't give it all away now. We got to save it for episode 3.
The dates.
Oh, the dates. Stay tuned for good recipes to make dates taste good after you've eaten 8.
No, they don't. 8 a day. But we're going to talk about the rest of our pregnancy, because that very end part just leads right into birth. Yeah. So we will talk about that in the next podcast.
Yep. And I know that we also mentioned talking about our midwife experience, but again, I think this one has gone on long enough.
Yeah.
And I think that could be kind of its own podcast. It's just talking about our midwife experience and everything that comes along with that,
the doctor, because you knew midwife right away, but I didn't know if I wanted a midwife or a doctor.
So I had an OB until I was 22 weeks.
Oh yes, because you didn't get in with the midwife right away.
It's a whole.
So we will keep that for the next episode for sure.
Yeah, we're gonna do a whole episode, I think, on midwives experience. We definitely want to tell our birth stories, so that's gonna be
coming very up soon. Yeah,
and
So we'll get into that after.
We'll get into that. I think this is long enough, though, so we're going to say goodbye, but follow us on Instagram. Oh, thank you so much for your support on Instagram.
Oh my God, guys. The first week of launching has just been incredible.
Yeah.
The support from you all, the likes, the shares.
The downloads.
It means so much.
It means so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. Stop saying thank you, because it really means so much to us. I love looking every morning,
Me too.
What's going on?
I check everything, yeah. But thank you guys so much, and we will see you for episode 3.
Episode 3, coming at you soon.
Bye.
Bye.